All right, so today's video is about how to find a dog that's a good fit for your home and your lifestyle. Um, a lot of people, when they're at this stage of like, I think I want a dog, they have no idea what they're looking for. Maybe they haven't had a dog since they were a kid, haven't been around a lot of dogs or people who have dogs. They haven't, gone to dog shows to see what a lot of the breeds are out there, what they look like, and what their temperaments are. Haven't spent a lot of time working with dogs at doggy daycares or going to dog parks. So there's just a lot that they don't know, and it's really hard to get that information just secondhand by like Googling things and asking people. It's kind of one of those things where you really need some first hand experience. And so I do recommend all those things. I recommend going to dog shows if you have any near you, and you have an interest in that. You can learn about the different purebred breeds. There's so many. I mean, many people could probably name 5 to 10 pure breeds, and that's all. But there's pretty sure over 100, if not a couple hundred. I don't know how many there are. There's so many breeds that I've never seen in person. I just know that most of the dogs that I have seen are a very narrow range of the breeds that do exist. Dog parks are a really great way to see how different dogs act, but you will find that there's a lot of mixes at dog parks, and you really can't get an idea of a dog's temperament if they're a mix of a bunch of different breeds, because even in a single litter of mixed dogs, you can have a wide range of different temperaments. So temperaments are really only predictable in a dog that is well bred, pure breed, to a certain standard. That means that the temperament traits they have match the traits they're supposed to have as a breed. There's many more of the dogs that are bred to look like a breed, not quite right, the trained eye can see that, but they don't act like the breed is supposed to act. Like a golden retriever could have aggression. A Labrador retriever could be noise sensitive, which they're not supposed to be because they're supposed to be gun dogs. So these are the types of things that only a good breeder can develop the traits that they're supposed to in the temperament, and bad breeders pretty much ruin the dogs that they're trying to breed because they're not selecting for certain temperament traits. So it's really not helpful to just study mixes if you want to know what kind of mix you want. Even let's say you like a certain mix that's a mix of two breeds and you're like, oh, I really like that one. You're going to find that there are some that turn out really nice and easy and just easy to own, and others are very difficult and hard to own, and you have to put in a lot of training, and even then you may not get the dog behaving the way you want. The most common mixes that I've seen of two breeds are German Shepherds and Huskies. I think maybe because they look a little similar, people might get them and have them in the same home and not spay and neuter and have accidental litters. See a lot of accidental litters. Huskies and Bullies, those are just really favorite breeds of many people. And the type of people who have oops litters are the type of people who are attracted to those dogs. It just kind of correlates. And I don't know what all the psychology is, but people who tend to own certain breeds have things in common with each other. And it's not always, it's not a rule. There's obvious exceptions, but there are these general traits. And so people who like the look of the mixes are not always the same people who actually can tolerate living with them. So some people are like, oh, I love that. I love how that dog looks. But they cannot tolerate living with it, and so the dog ends up being rehomed. And fewer people can tolerate living with these mixes than not. Another common mix is like lab mix, lab pit mix. Those are very common because those are two very common breeds. Um, those are the ones coming off the top of my head. But yeah, people who work in rescues and in shelters can confirm, like, yeah, the majority of the dogs that come in here, they try to name the breed by how they look. But most of the time when those dogs are DNA tested, they're not purebred. Um, it's an exception to find a purebred in rescue, and it's even bigger exception to find a healthy and uh, well-tempered one. Okay, so if you can't really, if you're open to a mix and you're like, hey, there's so many mixes in shelters, I just really want, you know, that feeling of knowing that I saved a dog from euthanasia and gave it a great life when it wouldn't have had a great life. I really get that. That's why I've always wanted to get a rescue rather than a purebred dog. Even though if I had just saved up enough money and if there was a purebred I liked, I would have saved a whole lot of money and a whole lot of hassle. But there aren't any purebreds that I like except Siberian Huskies is one that I like the look of. And so that's one where I'm like, you know what? There are so many Alaskan Huskies and Siberian Huskies here in Alaska because of the climate. They're used for mushing, and the Iditarod is out here. And so there's a whole lot of them being bred for mushing, but they either retire or they they don't like mushing. You know, if a dog doesn't really like to run that much in a pack with a team harness pulling, like, they have to enjoy it to be able to do it well. And there's plenty of them that don't enjoy it and they just need to find a pet home. But the problem is they make very challenging pets because they were bred to do, they were selected for the traits that they you know, should have been doing, but really didn't have that strong enough traits. But they're still way too strong traits to be an easy pet. They often are extremely hard to train because they weren't selected to be trained by voice commands. Except when they're hooked up to a harness, they have voice commands like go left or go right or fast or slow, just directions with how they're running. And but they don't have a lot of option to just go off and do their own thing because they're always either chained to a kennel, in a fenced dog yard, or, you know, in a transport vehicle, or hooked up to a sled. There's just not a lot of and usually mushers don't spend a lot of time working on like a good solid off-leash recall because they don't need to. It's not really so the dogs they don't need to be trained to be biddable. Biddable is means that the dog likes to obey you just because they like making you happy. Siberian Huskies don't. They could honestly care less about what makes you happy. Same with Alaskan Huskies. That's their temperament. And to know that about them, I really didn't. I'll tell you that. You can read that you read that they're more aloof, more independent, and stuff like that. But how that actually translates into your own life and experiences as you're taking out the dog and doing different things, I guess I'm the kind of person who needs to learn by doing and not just by, I don't learn from watching other people's mistakes. I learn by making my own mistakes. And yeah, a lot. I learn a lot that way. And so here's my recommendations when you're looking for a mix. I believe you really should try out ownership. You know, temporary ownership, trial adoptions with a lot of different dogs to get an idea of what you like and dislike, and really diversify those different breeds. I didn't diversify the different breeds because I was so determined to have a husky. I was like, man, I just love these dogs, especially blue-eyed huskies I'm a huge fan. I think they look amazing and they elicit a kind of obsessive response in me that makes me willing to do incredible stuff to make them happy. Okay. And this is what people who have huskies have. They're so obsessed with their dogs that they will tolerate the most incredible behavior that most people would be like, oh no, no, we're not doing this. Because these dogs are addictive to own. They're like a drug for some people. Just looking at your dog, watching them move around, even just like look at you like, wow, that dog is so stunning. So that I did have a very like strong aesthetic draw to huskies. Um, I've had a lot of criticism of how I have adopted dogs, had them for a while and rehomed them. So what I want to do is kind of address that from a really logical point of view and talk about what are the ways that you can really try out a rescue dog, a mixed breed, in a way that's going to be beneficial for the dog and allow you to have that hands-on experience. You need to kind of figure out what you like. So there are many, many rescues in every city. They're always looking for fosters. This is just like the demand for fosters is way higher than will ever be filled. So if you're at all open to loving on a dog that may not end up being your dog, this is totally for you. I work with other people's dogs, and I totally bond with them and happily give affection to a dog that isn't my own. And I've fostered many dogs, so it's just something in my personality. I could foster kids too. It's very similar to me to be able to love a child or an animal that isn't your own equally and give it the same amount of care. Some people are just like they're obsessed with their dog, but they're not really interested in anyone else's dogs. But if you watched me like driving, passing a dog, like I'm like craning my neck, oh look at the dog, look at the dog, oh look, there's a dog in a car, oh look, that I'm obsessed with dogs. I like studying how they look, how they move, their personalities. I want to know what makes them all different, and which people and lifestyles are a good match for different dogs. And I'm a dog person. So fostering is really awesome because the foster agency often pays for the food and vet care. So you don't have to even make a financial investment. You just have to provide a place for that dog, affection, shelter, and love, and be assessing that dog's temperament for different situations. Even if you don't take it out and try to take it to meet other dogs, play dates, dog parks, carefully. And I have lots of advice about that. Even if you're just interacting with the dog at home, you're able to kind of see what this dog's temperament is and be able to explain to the rescue, hey, this is what this dog likes and doesn't like, this is what they need, this is what they hate, this is what triggers them. And it helps the rescue to really match that dog to a home, whereas in a shelter or animal control or the pound, these dogs are in kennels. They get very little interaction and very little time with anyone to really assess their temperament and prepare a potential adopter for different behaviors that they might experience with this dog and what they need to know in advance. So I really think that more people should foster through adoption agencies. And I think that most animal controls, shelters, they would like using foster programs if they could find them, but there just is a huge lack in that area. And I think that there aren't very many people willing to spend the time, I don't know, investing into a dog that they're not going to keep, I think is what it is. So I'm not sure why I'm different in that area. I just, like, to me, if the dog isn't mine, I still enjoy making them happy. I think that's what makes me happy about dogs is not having them as like, okay, this dog is mine and that ownership, that's not what makes me happy. I don't need to have that. And I could be caring for someone else's dog and get just a lot of enjoyment from that, as long as the dog is a great match and easy. Like, I don't care. I love other people's dogs too. Um, and another thing, I think some people don't want to invest time into a dog they may not keep because they feel like it's too much of a burden, which might be a clue, that maybe you will tire of, investing in a dog once you do own it. Like, I do not enjoy running or walking. I actually have a lot of pain in my body, and physical exercise isn't something I enjoy. I might as well be grossly obese or crippled to some degree because of the limited function that I have. Yes, I'm thin and lean, and I look athletic to people, but I'm not, and I'm in a lot of pain. So I don't enjoy running or walking, or my dogs. I enjoy watching them enjoy it. That is literally the only thing that motivates me to take them out. I don't enjoy seeing them bored and listless and like, come on, can we just go outside? Like, they come alive when they're outside in a way that I just absolutely love to see. And so that's what motivates me to have dogs. Is I can be in the worst mood, and of course I don't always want to go outside. I have to layer up in the freezing cold. It could be snowing or raining. um, I don't want to go outside whatsoever, but my dogs need to go outside, so I take them outside, and then I see how happy they are, and it puts me in a good mood regardless of the temperature. I've gotten frostbite on my fingers because of being outside in negative 17 degrees, playing with dogs, because I just got so involved in seeing how happy they were. Like, that's what drives me. Um, so whether I'm fostering a dog or watching someone else's dog and getting paid, or working with my own dog, to me, it's all the same. The only difference is how difficult that dog is to fit in with my lifestyle. That's the thing that will make me either really stressed and edgy, and I feel like it drains me and leaves me more vulnerable to emotional ups and downs, or if the dog actually like contributes to my emotional stability because they're really solid and I don't have to constantly correct this or that behavior. So as someone who deals with mood disorder, noise sensitivities, and different things, there's certain traits that can really set me on edge. And one of those traits is barking, incessant barking, alert barking, fear barking, aggressive barking. It sets me on edge like nothing else. It's not a conscious decision. It just is like people who get irritated from the sound of fingernails on a chalkboard. Well, if you had to hear that all the time, you wouldn't get used to it. You would slowly go crazy. That's what happens to people like with torture. Like, you can literally lose your mind from just experiencing a very stressful sound constantly that grates on you. And some people are much more resilient to annoyances. Other people are very vulnerable, and I'm very vulnerable. I have been much more resilient in the past, and that has been a very noticeable factor in my ability to tolerate certain behaviors, like barking. And so I know that the more on edge I am and irritable I am, the less tolerance I have for behaviors that I can't actively change. I think that's why I got started in dog training. Is if I want to have a dog that has a behavior and I don't want to just rehome the dog, I need to figure out what are different training methods that I can use to help this dog to overcome this behavior so I can live with it. And so there's certain things that I've really focused my training attention on. And I'm going to circle back around to that, but I also wanted to mention, in addition to fostering, Rescues also have this option to do trial adoptions a lot of times. And if they don't have one, you should ask about it, because it really gives the dog an advantage. You sign up for a certain commitment, and of course, you can always, like, a week later be like, no, I can't handle this dog. But you try to commit to a longer time period so you can really see how the dog is once they decompress and settle into your routine and try to fit in with your lifestyle. And trial adoptions are really only beneficial when you do give them that longer bit of time. If you're just trying to decide on a dog in a week, it's not going to be effective, and you're just going to make it harder for the dog to bond with someone in the future. When you bring in your dog into your home for a very short time, if they're already stressed when they came into your home, I'm not talking about a situation where a dog has a stable home and then they go to board with someone in their home for a week. It's a little stressful, but not like a dog that has been in a very unstable home. So already they're anxious, and they come to another home, and your expectations are already too high for their behaviors. And, to the point where after a week, you're already deciding you can't tolerate them. That dog has experienced a lot of stress from people's reactions to how they're reacting. And so that's hard on a dog. But if you do a trial adoption where you do patiently allow the dog time to open up, and that's a really excellent way to see if that dog is for you or not. So I'd recommend either fostering or trial adoptions. And there's a third method that dogs are innately more vulnerable in this situation, and that is when no rescue is involved, but someone wants to rehome their dog personally, and they might post them on Adopt a Pet is a website where you can post your own dog available for adoption and rehoming. You can do it on Craigslist, although it's hard. It often gets flagged. Facebook, sometimes there are local groups where you can post a dog. I've got a couple of those groups in my city or in my state. There is also a specific website locally in my state where dog sales of purebreds, mixes, any dog, pet, or any animal really can be sold on this website, and that's specific to Alaska. It's called Alaska's List. But every city is going to have different options for finding those dogs that need a new home. The reason why dogs being rehomed from an individual home without a rescue involved are more vulnerable than dogs that are in a rescue is, and I'm not talking about the pound, rescues are those that don't put them down, that find fosters, is when someone is rehoming their own dog. Sometimes, and I'm not all the time, but I would say most of the time that I've seen, people are not doing the proper screening to really make sure that the new home is going to be a good fit. And they also don't do trial adoptions where you bring the dog back if it doesn't work. I've, adopted dogs from people who have never contacted me after that. Just like never check in on the dog that they rehomed, which is crazy to me. And so they're not screening properly. The people who take the dogs, if the dog doesn't work out, and oftentimes they're not really educated, like the person's wanting to get rid of their dog so much that they will withhold a lot of information that would be helpful for the people to know to decide if the dog would be a good fit. Does the dog have dog aggression, human aggression? Is it an escape artist? Does it have good recall? Does it have separation anxiety? Is it a destructive chewer? Does it have allergies? Is it up to date on its vaccinations? Any other health issues? All of these are really important. People don't know what questions to ask. A lot of times they just, get a dog based on how they look, and then they find out, wow, this dog's got a lot more going on than I was really ready for. So then the dog is rehomed again. And if the people who are rehoming the dog do the same thing, the dog could be rehomed so many times without anyone really making sure, like, okay, I want to make sure this is a good match for this dog, asking the appropriate questions, making sure that people can return the dog to you if it doesn't work out. I've always adopted dogs in from personal private adoptions rather than going through a rescue. Two reasons. I think I was blacklisted from a couple local rescues because of my business. My business is training dogs to have reliable off-leash recall, and I use e-collars. Some people are against that because they think off-leash dogs have poor recall and therefore can run off and get lost, and this is a very irresponsible thing, and that's true. Most people do not train their dogs to have reliable recall, and they'll let them off leash, and the dogs do get lost a lot. That's a big problem. E-collars can be abused and really used to harm a dog, not as much physically as psychologically, because of the fear of pain and the unpredictability of the consequences. But if you use e-collars right, excellent trainers use e-collars. But there are some people in this area who are very against any kind of negative training tools. And so if they know someone is using an aversive training tool like I do, you get blacklisted by rescues. Another reason is, oh yeah, okay, so those two things. My off-leash, I believe dogs need off-leash freedom, and you should do the extra work to make sure you train that dog to be off-leash safely. I really think that most dogs benefit from being able to run. And if you don't have a safe place for them to run, like really, really run, not a big enough yard, you don't have a dog park, or a dog that's safe to take to a dog park, e-collar training is awesome because you can take that dog anywhere with you, running, biking, and you have perfect recall with an e-collar if you do it right. So I couldn't adopt dogs from a rescue. I was only really had the option to adopt from private parties, but I also felt like this was really good because I was taking the dogs that were more vulnerable to being rehomed repeatedly, and at least investing some major training, assessment, and really doing screening to find them a new home if I found out they weren't a good fit. So I really recommend this to anyone who's willing to do that. It does cost more because when you're fostering a dog from a rescue, they will cover the vet fees and the food oftentimes. This, you have to come up with a rehoming fee and pay for their food and invest in their training, and they might not be the right fit, and then you have to keep them long enough to really find the right fit, which could be, for me, like one time I was looking for a dog for the right home for 6 months. It took a long time. And for some other dogs, it might take even longer. As long as there is the potential of a home being out there. It is, some dogs may be so far gone in aggression or whatever that there just aren't enough homes out there. And I don't think that you should be forced to keep a dog and the expense of it and the stress of it if there's really no one else out there for it. Some dogs just, the fact is that there are more dogs that are not really well tempered and highly adoptable than there are homes that are willing to invest in them. And so there are always going to be dogs that are put down. So I believe that if you have a very difficult dog that's going to have a hard time finding a home, you'd be better off euthanizing that dog and giving another more adoptable dog a chance that someone is going to find an easier time with. Many people disagree with me, and I am very thankful for them. Anyone who is willing to put their time and money into trying to rescue aggressive, unadoptable dogs is like a god to me. Like, you've got to have a lot of money and time to be able to do that. Like a very successful business to be able to fund that. I wish I did. Like, if I had endless money, I guarantee you I'd be saving all the unadoptable dogs. 'Cause I feel like there's a lot of satisfaction from that. There is. I've experienced that. It's really neat feeling, but with a limited income, I have to focus my efforts on dogs that I can that aren't going to dig me into a financial hole. Okay, so I fund my fostering, everything that I've done with rescues from just working with my dog business, walking dogs, boarding dogs, training dogs. And so right now, my income is really low because I just moved to a new city, moved an hour away from where all my clients were, and I was, it was more an established clientele, and people knew my name a little more. Here, I'm brand new, and so I'm also taking time to set up different, what's the word? I don't know. I'm setting up my facility so I have secure areas where dogs that are not the dogs that I'm supposed to be taking care of, like neighbor dogs or dogs that just wander around, won't be able to come in and cause problems. That's one thing. And when I have a secure area, I will be able to work with more dogs safely and not have to keep my eye on every single one, eyes kind of darting around. And then my limit has been 7 dogs in the past. Now that my ADHD is a little worse, I feel like it's about 5, depending on the dog, to really be able to watch and keep track of that many dogs off leash in an area and be able to watch their body language, make sure they're all getting along. So if I could increase my income, I'd be doing a whole lot more. But as it is, I feel like the way I've done things has been really ethical. And I've been criticized for, I don't know, like serial rehoming dogs. But if people saw my motives, I'm hoping that they would see that I'm not just like, oh, I want to try that dog, and then I'm like, ugh, I don't like that dog, I'm gonna get rid of it. It's more like this dog doesn't fit with my very specific narrow range of what I need in a dog. And if I tried to force the fit, the frustration would build. And I have had to do that for periods of time where I've been looking for a new home for a dog because I know they're not a good fit and haven't been able to find a home. And it is, that frustration does build because you get stress beyond what your capacity to handle, sometimes financially, sometimes time-wise, and sometimes I get spread too thin sometimes with my physical and mental, emotional kind of weaknesses. And it's frustrating because I still act like I have no limitations, like when I was younger and I didn't have all these physical, mental, emotional problems. And it's really hard for me to remember how disabled I really am. I'm not. I've never pursued disability because I don't want to be disabled. But by a lot of measures, I'm, partially disabled. And really kind of limits my ability to tolerate certain things. Just, I have to keep my stress levels pretty low. So I'm going to end this video here, and then my next video I'm going to just tell you the backstory on the few animals that I have done trial adoptions with, and why I have decided to stop doing that and start developing my own breed.